Hi, everybody. This is Pete. I'm going to do a tag that I was tagged by Gavin. The tag is the Mirror and Windows Reading tag. I'm looking over at my laptop so I can look at the prompts. So maybe I'll move things closer together here. It's not an ideal filming situation today, but whatever. I'll stop complaining. Anyway, so the tag was created by Book Chat with Pat, great channel. And she's a very knowledgeable channel, and it is called the New Windows and Mirrors Reading Tag. And as I said, Gavin Genre Books tagged me. His name might even come up in my answers. Maybe, you never know, because I haven't really thought about my answers yet very much, of course. Okay, so the prompts are there's four prompts, or there's five, including tagging others, and then this is mainly focused on talking about booktubers, talking about other channels. And the prompts are the first one is about books, and the others are about booktubers, I think. Oh, no. Two are about booktube channels, and two are about books. So, first of all, the prompt number one is talk about a few books that served as mirrors to you, allowing you to see some aspect of your life experience reflected in in a meaningful way. I pretty much studiously avoided books in my life that I thought were reflective of my own experience. I'm a genre. I like going outside of my experience for what appeals to me as a writer. And honestly, the thing that comes to mind more than anything, and I would have not have watched this movie if I'd known this, but it is a movie, and it is so far above anything else I've ever experienced in meeting this prompt, anything that reflects your own life experience, and that is the movie. I forgot the name already. Terrence Malick's 2011 movie, Meaning of Life. That movie is my childhood, like, filmed. I would love to meet Terrence Malick and tell him that. It's the only time in my life I've ever thought of wanting to do that to any creator. I mean, there's a lot of people I'd like to meet, of course, but never to say you gave me experience I've never had in any other piece of art. The character that Brad Pitt plays is like a 100% my father. His same resentments, his same demeanor and everything. The way he lived his life when we were young. The oldest kid, is me. The mother, not so much. Jessica Chastain played the mother in that, and she's uh, that I didn't relate to so much. I don't see any similarity there, but just the behavior of the kids running around in Texas. I was running around in rural Nevada, and it just hit me so hard. And the end, when Sean Penn is as the grown up version of the boy in the heart of the movie. Oh, when he's on the beach with and post in the next life or whatever it's supposed to be, or in his imagination, and meeting and seeing all the people from his life and coming to some kind of happiness and acceptance. It's really powerful. It's one of the and I would not have watched it, like I'm saying. I'm not really into heavy introspective stuff for its own sake, although I like uh, it at times. I think a lot of people probably miss this movie because the first half hour or so is the creation of the earth and dinosaurs and stuff like that. It's very experimental, but once it settles down into that family story, it is just amazing. So I really can't. I got to go back to my page now. I really can't think of any books, and in Gavin's video after he gave his answers, book chat Pat from Book Chat with Pat gave a good reaction to it there. I was getting that over. Make sure if there's another way I can approach this question. My experience. It's a huge part of my experience in book time, especially the reading of SF. I always find myself thinking of books. I guess I'll have to leave it at that. I can't really think of an autobiographical book that or anything that really relates. I mean, whether it's well, we'll get to more to that in question number three, which is the window frames question. Anyway, moving on to prompt number 2. Talk about a couple of booktubers whose reading is most like your own. I would say among big channels, well, I guess it's not big or small is really relevant to my response here, but I would say it's mostly Grammaticus books is an excellent one. I feel like he's either reading something that I love very much or something that I haven't gotten around to that I would love to read more of. His channel, I think, is the most like my reading. Another one is Gavin himself. The books he talks about. Mostly on my channel, and I didn't consciously intend to do this, but I talk about books from genre books from before 1980, the good old stuff, and so those are a couple there that do that. I would say Gavin and Grammaticus. Michael Cavan a bit. He has slightly different skew on some of the stuff, slightly different direction, but he reads a lot of the stuff that I like too. There are other people who read in the genres I like, but just like completely different stuff. And maybe that's better to talk about later. Talk about a couple of booktubers whose reading is most like your own. Okay, so that's two, Gavin and Grammaticus. Both channels I love. I always look forward to hearing what they've said. Another one. No, he's too knowledgeable. I'm going to leave him off for now. Talk about a couple booktubers whose reading is most like your own. I did that. Talk about a few books that served as window frames to you, allowing you to see the reality of others outside of your experience. Well, this is what most of my reading is. I would say any 19th and early 20th century women novelists like Edith Wharton, I talk about a lot on here, and the Brontes, especially Charlotte. I haven't read all her books. I've still got to read Villette. I just don't want to read it because then I won't have any Bronte books to read. But Wuthering Heights, just a female perspective, woman's perspective on the world, the social conditions, and also their personal feelings about romance and things like that. Those are ones I like to read that I read for that reason. Who else? Yeah, and part of the thing that's so fascinating about these books and others that I read from the time, like say Henry James, is the class difference. They usually relate to people who are upper middle class drivers or lower upper middle class. Those are the kind of people that books were written about that at that time. With the exception of Dickens, who came from humbler beginnings. A lot of these writers came from the upper middle class, were well educated, well, I almost said tutored. I guess that's the same as educated, or well mentored. Um, so those kind of things I like reading about. Another one is crime books. Definitely, you can go right back to Raskolnikov in Crime and Punishment by Dostoyevski. It's just in the mind of a quite different person than me. I hope anything about crime, anything about people who are rebelling against society in a very overt and violent way is a window outside of my personal experience. As far as as far as I'm going to admit to, but. Yeah, that kind of thing. I think that's why I read crime fiction, to see the extremes of human experience. In the best crime fiction, you get that both on the high end and the low end. In classic crime fiction, you've got people who go out of their way to be helpful to others and to right wrongs. Most of us, most of our lives we're just going along trying to handle our own business, and then in crime fiction, you many times have a person who takes upon themselves to right society's wrongs, and I guess it's the same with superheroes and things like that. So talk about a few books that are just okay. So number 4, talk about a couple of the YouTube channels that have expanded your horizons, help you to explore books and genres outside your comfort zone, or challenge you in some way. Well, I'll go with gotta mention Steve Donahue here because he's so well read on in many genres, and he along with Mark at Book Time with Elvis. Uh, uh, Both because they're so well read in nonfiction. I don't read very much nonfiction. I like to keep up with everything, and I'm trying to get more nonfiction read. But they're the most of the booktubers I watch all the time. They're the most outside of what I read, and with another one being David Novak. What's David's channel's name? David Novak Reads Poetry, I think. I'll put it in there, because he reads a lot of poetry, which I haven't read in quite a while, and a lot of nonfiction as well. A lot of stuff I would say is literary criticism, but it's probably not literary criticism. It's criticism adjacent, um, and Faces Book Reviews, Jay at Faces Book Reviews, because he reads a lot of westerns, and I've read a few westerns here and there, and I do like them, but he's much more versed on them, and so I like to read his channel and to catch up on that. And also he does a fair amount of indie reviews and discussions of indie authors, along with Kevin Toll Reads, and Kevin Toll had an event recently about reading about indie authors. So I watch those two channels. Kevin and Jay, to learn about the indie field. I have not. I'll be honest. I have not had very good luck reading indie books. It's possible I'm just reading the wrong ones, but well, I'll leave it at that before getting on a whole rant about indie books. But contemporary books, it's tough for me. I really like older books, and by older I mean before 1980, going back to the early 19th century, 19th, 20th centuries. I think is my jam. There's so much still more to read. Another one who is a window for me is Outlaw Bookseller, and because he reads science fiction, he reads the kind of science fiction I like, but he talks extensively about a lot of authors that I missed or never got to in my first round of reading science fiction. I'm trying to get to some of them now because we live in we live in a golden age of reprints, especially if you're an ebook reader. There's so many things that are being reissued. There's many authors that have estates, like Jack Vance is one that have well husbanded estates where their relatives are making sure that everything stays in print, even stuff that's been out of print forever. Gardner Fox has family like that, apparently. The Gardner Fox, the comic writer, and wrote a lot of wrote some sword and sorcery, and wrote a ton of paperbacks, in addition to all creating the Flash and the Justice League and everything. He's not the greatest writer in the world, but it is great that many of these old writers their books were hard to find, and Outlaw Bookseller really features a lot of them, especially the British ones that I had never got to, like D.G. Compton and Bob Shaw, and who else is on my list? Keith Roberts, and those that really weren't that accessible to me in growing up. They weren't in print. I mean, very much. I mean, even at the time, I was growing up reading a lot of science fiction. A lot of Philip K. Dick was only available in British editions. You can get them sometimes in the United States as imports. But that era, the early '80s, was not really great for preserving the history of science fiction. especially of the new wave era. So I missed a lot of things, but because of reprint programs like people's own self publishing, and also Gateway and is one of the publishers that reissues a lot of science fiction classics. Gateway Books, and there's so many great booksellers doing that. Valancourt Books are making sure all this stuff doesn't get lost, and there's so much good stuff. There's so much high quality writing. I am talking top tier, as well written as anything you will find on the mainstream bookshelves, mainstream lists of those eras. You'll find in science fiction. A lot of stuff's uneven too because of the pressures of composition, with very low advance rates and everything. But in general, word processors destroyed everything, because when people were typing their books, they were a lot better written, in my opinion. And that's a long, long time ago now. Anyway, so those are some of my windows. Talk about a couple of booktube channels have expanded your horizons. Okay, I guess I've started. Oh, I did that one. Okay, so that's it. I guess I got to go through this video and make sure I mention everybody. Make sure I put everybody's channel that I mentioned in the comments, and I will also use that as my tagging list, because I don't see too many of them here as being tagged. So I apologize if you're tagged twice. Uh, um, but I'll tag MJ. I didn't mention her yet. But again, she's a person who reads a lot, the kind of books I like, but she reads more contemporary ones. So often, I mean, she reads classics too, but she reads everything. Uh, and so I learn a lot from her channel all the time. I think she's one of the most informative channels out there, along with all the others. And that's it. Do this if you haven't seen it. Do it. And okay, thanks for the tag, Gavin, and I'll let you go, everyone.